Okay, today we have an issue with the toilet that is making some noises. It's running continuously, just a little bit. So we are going to replace the fill valve and the flapper. You can buy just the flapper, or you can buy just the fill valve, but we're just gonna get the whole kit because it hasn't been replaced. So there's a couple of different brands, but Fluid Master is one I've used, but there's a lot of stuff out there. But they're just either the fill valve or the flapper, or you can buy both. So, and I'll show you more about that. And if you haven't heard of Nate Bargatze, super fun, awesome, clean comedian, iced coffee, whipped cream. If you haven't seen it, check it out. So there's a couple of things that we need to know. First, the shutoff valve. And some just turn like 90 degrees or 45 degrees, and others you have to continue turning. This one we have to continue turning to shut off first, because we'll need to empty the tank. That'll be step one. So we're shutting off the shutoff valve, and it will shut off the water into the tank. And that's the supply line going into the tank. And you see here there are actual wing nuts. So way back when, you had to use pliers or brute force. Now there's wing nuts, so we probably won't even need any tools. Probably. So those are the two things we need to do. So this is going to go inside the tank. So we need to empty the tank first, and then we will replace these parts inside the tank. So you just take the top off if it's not connected to anything. I'll just set it way out of the way. And you can see that there is the fill valve and there is the flapper. You can also replace all the parts. So you can replace this lever, you can replace this chain that's in here. We're not going to. I mean, that tends to be some pretty simple stuff, although notice this one is loose. So I'll just tighten him a little bit. So that's better. So I'm just going to replace the insides of this with the new stuff. So to empty it, all you have to do is turn it on or flush the toilet, and you will notice, since there's no water refilling, that it will flush, but it will not fill it again. So now there's just a little bit of water in the tank, and so usually just you can grab whatever you want. You can grab towels, you can grab a small cup, use your hand, whatever. You'll see a little bit of residual stuff in here, but this water isn't dirty. So just to get the rest of the water down there, because we're going to remove this, and when we do, whatever water's in there will just go down out of that hole. So we just want to remove as much of that water as we can. So I'll get a bowl to put under this when I remove this nut and lift this out, and that water will go down that hole. So I'm going to go grab a towel and a bowl. Okay, so I have a bowl for some water. Put a towel down just in case. We already shut off the shutoff valve. So first, I'm going to loosen this. So, and again, I'll show you, but these have wing nuts on them. So you don't even need a tool. Okay. Now when I lift this out, there will be some residual water. And I will just disconnect this clip and just lift this right out of here. So I'm taking the wing nut off that connects the valve to the tank. So of course this connected the supply line of water to the tank to fill it, and then the smaller wing nut connected this valve to the tank itself. Notice there's a lot of water pouring out of there. Gets to be too much. Nope, it'll be fine. So just notice old and new. Now it looks like they put some plumber's tape on there, which I've never done, so I'm not going to do that this time either. So this was actually in the kit, and this goes on this shank. just to make it more watertight. So it just pops on there. And then notice that will then go back down into that hole and make it nice and watertight. So this little nipple faces into the center, and that will connect to this new clip. It connects right there. So I'll just face that this direction. The one thing that the directions show is that the top of this should be 3 inches from the top of this pipe. It could probably be a little bit higher. So this shows you grab onto that shank and then turn, and it lifts it. And it lifts very easily, actually. So I'm just turning. You can see. Now I'm just going back the other direction. So it just makes it a little bit taller. So let's see again. Of course, you can see that it's still plenty of underneath the level of the tank. So it just needs to be, I mean, just 3 inches. It doesn't have to be exact at all. So that should be good. So, and then it also came with the new wing nut holding the valve. I think I've said this in other videos. You don't ever want to over tighten pretty much any of these new types of nuts. So if you're familiar with your strength, you can probably figure out how tight to tighten it. Okay, and then so up above, we have this nipple. If you can see this on this side, and that will be where the water refills. So that needs to have this new tube go from that to here that then just refills the tank. So in this situation, I'm going to cut this, just a regular old pair of scissors. There's no real magic to it. You just don't want to have any real kinks in the tube. All right, so there is that assembly. Then we need the flapper to be put on there. It does come with a little piece of paper that says remove it. So you might want to remove it. And then these are all a little bit different. This just clips straight down. Some are round and go around it. So you just see which one it is. This one looks like it goes, nope, it just clipped right on top. So same thing, it just clipped right on top. This is the chain there. So I'm just going to take this chain off. And the only thing you'll need to do then is get the distance so that the flush is proper. Now the other thing you want to do is make sure, see the red around there? Because I'm not replacing this, which I could. This is some really ucky stuff too. Don't touch it to anything or it will stain. So you just want to clean that around there so that the flapper has a good seal. So now we have the new flapper. A lot of times that is the problem, is that seal. You can just see the old one is worn. So a lot of times that seal just, I mean, it's just wearing, it's just rubber. So the newer one is thicker and more flat. So same thing, you're just popping the little U-clamps very simply. They pop right on there very, very easily. And then you figure out the length that you need. Like this is going to be way too long. So you just have to play with this as you go. And you just hook it through another link. Just make it shorter, and then you can hook it through. And usually there are multiple holes here too, so you can put it through any one of the holes in the lever. So there's that. That might even be just a little bit too long. So I'm just going to move it up, see what that does. That might hit the top of the tank. So I'm going to make this shorter. And again, it's just playing with it. It's not difficult. Just putting through the next chain length and then putting it through the hole in the lever. So that's a pretty short, so you can look at the lever. So you're barely pushing it down, and then it will go up and not hit this won't hit the tank. So that should be good right there. So that should have created a very nice seal. So that is really it for the tank. And then all we need to do now is reconnect the supply valve. You always want to make sure that you don't have any leaks. I'm just going to push down again real quick and tighten that one more time. And then, this is the old wing nut, so I don't need this one. And then the water supply line again. Don't over tighten, but of course you want to tighten enough, and then you'll see when you turn the water on if there's any leak. So as I put the supply line back on and tightened it, you could hear some clicking. It actually broke right there. This snapped in half. This is just a piece of plastic. So pretty unusual to have that happen. So we need to replace this supply line. So I'm just going to take that off. Because this shutoff valve is off, it should not leak at all. So I'm just going to try a crescent wrench here first. See if I can loosen it. I don't want to torque on it too much because a lot of times these are very dainty. As you can see, the thing's coming out of the wall. A lot of times they've been in place for a long time. So you just don't want to put too much pressure on them, or you may end up needing this entire new shutoff valve. And then you're talking about shutting the water off for the house. So all I'm doing is taking off this very small supply line that supplies water to the toilet.
What are you using to take it off?
I'm using a crescent wrench, or whatever its generic term is, adjustable locking wrench, probably. You know, where you can adjust the size. I could also just be using a pair of pliers at this point because I've already gotten the tough part. You don't want to use pliers usually because you can strip the nut as you're taking it off. So now I'm able to just use my fingers. And this could have a little bit of water that'll come out. I always like to have a towel and or a little bowl to help. So that is off. And then this is a standard. So this will be called a toilet supply line. The only difference is there are multiple lengths. So that length is going to be approximately one foot long. So because it's bent, that is probably a 1 foot long supply line for a toilet. So this will be a standard. So we're going to go to a local home improvement place, get this, put that back on, and then turn the water back on, and we will be good to go. But here's just an example of some things that may have happened. So I just needed a pair of pliers or a crescent wrench. We went to the store, got a new 12-inch, and it's literally just a 12-inch toilet supply line, standard. They come in many different lengths, but this was a 12-inch supply line, so we got a 12-inch. And it took so long that and now I'm wearing my favorite Buc-ee's shirt from Fort Worth, Texas. It was a gift from some super cool people when we moved. So I am going to put this on. Once this is on, then we'll just open the shutoff valve, and it should then fill up the tank, and we should be good to go. The important thing is, have your hands dry so that you know if there's any leaks. That's the best way to find out if there's a leak. Just have your hands dry, turn everything on. You don't have to full blast everything, but you can just turn it on slowly. And as long as your hands are dry, you just put your hands up underneath there and you can tell. Okay, now first, let's get this attached to the shutoff valve. Again, with anything like this, you just don't want to over tighten. I am probably just going to use a pair of pliers. Just be careful not to strip anything. Just using the pliers because it's easier. I'm not going to over tighten. I can't tighten it with my hand, so let's just say that's pretty tight. And then you can bend these a little bit. So now we'll go to the tank. And again, these are just a nice wing nut. Actually, nuts now with wings all over them. Again, just try not to over tighten. I'm not going to use a pair of pliers or a wrench on this yet. I'm just going to see if everything's fine first. Okay, let's try it. So my hands are dry. Now let's turn it on to see if there's any leaks here or here. That was the water flowing into the tank. And I barely have it on. Turn it on more. My hands are dry, so I'm just gonna put them up here. No moisture at all. And you'll feel cold. That's why I like to have my hands dry, because sometimes the cold will fool you and you'll think it's moisture. So my hands are still dry. So I think we're good. Shouldn't be any leaks. I'm gonna go full open. I'm just going to dry it off everything so I know. And there are times if, as I said, if this leaks, you may need a whole new shutoff valve, and then you just have to shut off the water to the entire house, replace this entire shutoff valve. No moisture anywhere. Okay, so let's go back up to the tank. And notice it is filling through the new tube. So that filled. And then we want to check the level in the toilet. And that looks like a good amount of water. So let's just do this again. So the new flapper should have a nice seal. The red flapper should have a nice seal. And we just want to make sure that this bowl, where it used to be a bowl, but the float comes up far enough and shuts off, and that's how this is shut off. And you can adjust the height right here. Very, very, very simple. I can just turn it a little bit because it doesn't matter. You just click. You're just turning it. I mean, literally just turning it. And that lifts the float and will put more water in the tank, which will put more water in your toilet. So if you feel like there's not enough, you can just keep turning this and it'll keep lifting this float and add more water to the tank. So I just want to wait till it stops. You can see the last float maybe was a little bit higher, right where that brown level is from the water over the years. So, I mean, this is totally fine. If someone felt like, oh no, that wasn't enough water before, then I could raise this again. But this is fine. So that is as simple as that, as replacing the fill valve and the flapper. Now there won't be any leaks, the toilet will be running like a ghost when nobody's around here, because the flapper probably didn't have a great seal, so the water was going down. It was telling the toilet to keep flushing. And again, we just had to replace the 12-inch toilet supply line because that piece broke just from age. So sometimes you run into things like that, but it's that simple. I think this assembly that we bought was $15. You can buy the whole thing for probably $25. So if you can do it yourself, that was a $15 project. And then we added whatever the supply line was, another probably $15. So a very simple project. Very, very easy to do. Hope that helps. And thank you and have fun.